Welcome to the Daily Recap. 8 children are dead in Louisiana. The youngest victim was 18 months old. Let that sink in for a second. A toddler who had barely learned to walk is gone because of a mass shooting rampage in a residential neighborhood. And here is the question nobody seems to be able to answer. How does something this horrific keep happening in broad daylight, in communities full of kids just trying to live their lives? Here's what we know right now. Shreveport, Louisiana. A mass shooting broke out and the victims, every single one of them, were children. 8 kids are confirmed dead. Others were wounded. The victims ranged in age from 18 months old all the way up to 14 years old. These are babies. These are middle schoolers. These are kids who should be watching cartoons, playing outside, going to school. Shreveport police responded to the scene and confirmed that the suspect was fatally shot. So the shooter is dead. Law enforcement took him out, which stopped the immediate threat, but the damage was already done. 8 families got the worst phone call a parent can ever receive. The shooting was reported in the city of Shreveport, which sits in the northwestern corner of Louisiana. Police have not yet released the full name of the suspect publicly at the time of this video, but investigators have confirmed they are looking into the motive and piecing together a detailed timeline of exactly how this unfolded. Witnesses in the area described chaos, people running, parents screaming, first responders flooding into the neighborhood trying to triage wounded children on the scene. Local hospitals went into emergency protocols to handle the incoming victims. Some of those wounded kids remain in serious condition. This is being treated as a mass murder investigation. That label matters. This was not a stray bullet. This was not a single incident of gun violence. This was a rampage. A deliberate attack. And 8 children paid the ultimate price. This story matters for reasons that go so far beyond the immediate tragedy, as gut-wrenching as that tragedy already is on its own. First, think about who the victims are. These are not adults who unfortunately found themselves in the wrong place. These are children. The youngest is 18 months old. That child had no concept of danger, no ability to run, no way to protect themselves. When we talk about mass shootings in America, we often talk in statistics and policy debates, and sometimes we lose the human reality. Today, the human reality is impossible to ignore. Second, this hits communities in ways that last for decades. The kids who survived this shooting, they are going to carry this trauma for the rest of their lives. Studies on childhood trauma consistently show that witnessing or surviving violent events at a young age rewires how a brain develops. We are talking about anxiety, PTSD, developmental challenges, difficulties forming relationships. The wound does not close when the news cycle moves on. Third, Shreveport is not a wealthy city with unlimited mental health resources. This is a community that was already stretched thin before today. The infrastructure to support mass trauma response, the therapists, the crisis counselors, the community organizations, those resources are not always readily available in places like this. So the community has to absorb an unthinkable amount of pain with limited tools to process it. Fourth, look at the national conversation this ignites. Every time a mass shooting happens, especially one involving children, there is a predictable and deeply frustrating cycle. Outrage pours in from all sides. Politicians offer thoughts and prayers. Advocates demand action. And then, historically, very little changes at the federal level. The question is whether this specific shooting, with victims this young, in numbers this devastating, is the moment something shifts, or whether the cycle just repeats again. Parents across America are going to hear this story tonight and feel something primal. Fear for their own kids. Rage at a system that seems unable to protect children. Helplessness. And that emotional response is completely valid, because the numbers show this kind of violence is not getting better. To understand why Shreveport, why Louisiana, why children, you need some context. Louisiana consistently ranks among the highest states in the country for gun violence rates per capita. This is not a new development. For years, the state has sat near the top of national rankings for both gun deaths and violent crime. Shreveport specifically has struggled with violent crime and poverty for a long time. The city has faced budget shortfalls, reduced police staffing, and all the compounding social factors that researchers consistently link to elevated violence. Nationally, the United States has seen a devastating pattern of mass shootings targeting spaces where children gather: schools, playgrounds, neighborhoods. The Gun Violence Archive, which tracks these incidents, has documented hundreds of mass shootings in the United States annually for several consecutive years now. The definition of mass shooting used by researchers typically involves 4 or more people shot in a single incident. Federal gun legislation has moved slowly. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, passed in 2022, was the most significant federal gun safety legislation in nearly 3 decades, but advocates on all sides acknowledged it was a limited step. Red flag laws, universal background checks, and assault weapon restrictions remain deeply contested at both the state and federal level. Louisiana has some of the most permissive gun laws in the country. The state does not require permits to purchase firearms and has broad carry allowances. Whether those laws directly contributed to today's shooting is something investigators will examine over the coming days and weeks. Here's what happens from here. Investigators in Shreveport will spend the next several days building a complete picture of who the suspect was, what their motive was, how they obtained their weapon, and whether there were any warning signs that were missed. That information will matter enormously. Local officials will hold press conferences. There will be vigils. Community leaders will call for healing. And inevitably, this shooting will enter the national political conversation about gun violence. Experts who study these events say the most important immediate steps are transparency from law enforcement, rapid deployment of trauma support resources for survivors and witnesses, and a thorough investigation that does not rush to simple explanations. On the policy front, advocacy groups will use this moment to amplify calls for legislative action. Whether that pressure translates into actual movement in Congress or the Louisiana State House is deeply uncertain. History suggests the window for political action after a mass shooting is narrow and often closes without meaningful change. The families of 8 children are planning funerals. That is where this ends right now. 8 funerals for kids who should have had entire lives ahead of them. 8 children, 18 months to 14 years old, gone in Shreveport, Louisiana. The suspect is dead, but the damage is permanent. We will keep following this story as new details emerge and bring you updates right here on the Daily Recap. If this matters to you, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a story. We will see you in the next one.